How you doing? This is Larry, head of the Sound Ministry of Heart to Heart. Right here is the Behringer X32. This is our soundboard. This is where we control everything sound related. I have a few videos already that talk about some of the basics, but now I want to talk about a little technical stuff here. Okay? All right. First things first. Okay. Make sure whenever you're coming here for sound, hit this view button right here, and then up here you see how everything is black. You see this arrow? And now everything shows up on the screen. Everything I'm about to show you should be set exactly how it is, but just in case it's not, you want to make sure you always highlight HHIM load service. I'll hit the button load, and then I'll hit yes. That way, down here, everything that's on this board now is loaded to that particular service. So 90% of your problems can be solved by reloading those settings, okay? Now, once you load the settings, I talked about the house versus the monitor settings. I talked about that in a previous video, but now I want to talk about an individual channel. Okay, right now for practice, I'm going to use this channel 13 right here. So you saw that I selected that channel. Now, if you notice, everything up top, there's different lights for everything. Everything up top is now controlled by this particular channel because it's highlighted. Any channel you highlight, if you notice, some of the buttons change because each one of those are different. So I'm highlighting this one because I have to have that mic. You see how this is going up? That's my volume levels. There's volume levels there. But now I want to talk about some of the things you see up here. This can be very, very confusing. Most of this you won't ever have to touch. But the first thing I like to do is hit this view button in the equalizer section. And if you look at the screen, you see how, as I'm talking, the waves are moving. This is actually a visual representation of my voice as I'm talking. So you see those are my lows over here. This is my high section. And now let's say it's in the middle of a service, I'm talking, and I want to have more highs. I want my highs to be amplified. I always hit this equalizer button just because. Now I'm going to go over to my highs. I selected my highs. Now there are two buttons here. There's gain and there's frequency. Gain, anytime you deal with gain, it increases the amount of output that is possible versus the faders down here, which increases just the bass volume. The gain increases the amount of bass volume you have, so that means you can have a stronger sound. Think of it like, I'm going to have my hands on camera here. Think of it like there's a hose here. Your fader is the hose, and you set it to a certain amount. But let's say the hose is as big as it's going to get, and you can't get any more sound. If you turn, this is all your sound here. It's a lot of sound coming through, but you want more. If you turn the gain up, that increases the size of the hose to where you can push out more of that sound. So I always try to make sure I select this first. But if I crank this all the way up here and people still aren't loud enough, that's a signal that that's a gain problem. But anyway, okay. If we're talking about gain, and there's two buttons here, gain and frequency, these are the two things I like to mess with on particular microphones. Let's say I want, like I said earlier, I want more highs. So this is the gain. I want to increase the amount of bass volume that I can have in it. So now that threshold is stronger to where as I'm talking, my highs can project more, and you'll physically see that now I'm allowing it to. But you notice how the blue is only here, but the main part of this is over here? Well, I want that included. I want all this included. So the frequency shifts over to where I'm at. So now when I'm talking, now this section of my highs can now be increased because I turned the gain up. The frequency, I can shift it over. The gain, I can raise it up. I can cut it out if I don't like highs in my Bishop. A lot of times doesn't like a lot of his highs, so I can cut it out. Or I can turn the gain up and bring it up. The same thing with the high mids. High mids, I can bring it up, bring it down. I can shift it left and right. The low mids, same thing. If you hear my voice, obviously I have a Mufasa type voice, I think. I can raise it up or I can cut it. That's where most of my voice is. So if I'm changing my settings, I'd mainly be using this one because that's where most of my sound is coming from. Then my lows, my super, super lows, I can change that back and forth, okay? So those are the highs, high mids, lows, and lows. There's other buttons, but for this video, that's all I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about one more button in this section, and that's this one. I call this the master gain. Okay? That master gain, I try my best to not use it, but sometimes I need to. Earlier in the video, I talked about if I need more power. If you're struggling, you're raising somebody up, and you really, really need some more power, and you're freaking out, or there's a lot of squealing happening because you need to change something, then and only then should you control the game. I'm going to give you a good example of when you should control the game. You see how this is green? If I'm speaking into this mic, let me see if I can get it to do that. Check, check, yeah, see? I crank the gain up, and you see how it's peaking right here? You never want to have the volume peaking when you're talking. When you're speaking, problems are going to happen. You see how crazy that's going? All right, problems are going to arise every time you're talking. You never should see this on a singer, ever. If you see this, your gain is too high. Come over here to the master gain for that channel. Bring that down. If you notice, now I brought it down to here. Now my volume's here. It's comfortable. Now I can play around with the slider. If I need to come over here with the gain for that channel, I can mess with that one a little bit, but I'm trying not to touch that unless I have to, okay? But these are just some of the basics of the top parts. There are many more buttons that I'll talk to you about on later times, but honestly, me personally, if you go back to those settings I showed you earlier and load, most of that you won't have to touch, like at all. Just always make sure when you first open up the soundboard that you open up the original settings, and those settings should keep you right for most services. But this is a little intro of some of the basics for each individual channel. I hope this helped. Leave comments or any questions in the comment section, and I'll see you later. Take care. Bye-bye.